Hi, everyone. This is going to be a continuation of our series, Who Were the Nicolaitans? And this episode is entitled, Why Does Jesus Quote Acts 15 to Expose the Nicolaitans for Twisting James' Letter to the Antioch Church? And the sub question is, Who knew of these words written to the Antioch Church? And so we're trying to figure out who the Nicolaitans are. And we established in the last episode that it doesn't mean it's a group under authority of a guy named Nicholas. In Aramaic, the person hearing it in Aramaic would have thought it says, this is a group of people that says, let us eat whatever we want. That's what it means. Let us eat whatever we want. So in Revelation 2:24, Jesus quotes from Acts 15 the passage about where James says, we're not going to put anything else on them at this time. So let's look further. Okay, and as we explained to you last time, the InterVarsity Press very mainstream Protestant commentary, the IVP New Testament commentaries, which you can get when you go to BibleGateway.com. You go to the verse we're going to cite and discuss is Revelation 2:24, and you can just literally look up this text. And this is what they say, talking about Jezebel, which is a figure who's teaching you can eat meat sacrificed to idols along with the false apostle, false teachers, and so on. Is it one group, or is it really these are just different names of the same person or the spirit? So Jezebel, like the Nicolaitans at Pergamum, so says IVP, she was urging sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols, verse 20. And it says compare to 14. In other words, the violation of the decree of the Jerusalem Council. So the IVP commentator recognizes what we're talking about is exactly what the Acts 15 Council, which was the 12 apostles, they were meeting under authority of James, the bishop. That's Jesus' brother. He's not an apostle. Paul thought he was, but he wasn't. The brother of James was just a bishop. A possible further reference to that decree appears in words directed to the rest of you in Thyatira. This is quoting Jesus now. To you who do not hold to her teaching, meaning these are people who do not eat meat sacrificed to idols. When Jesus is then mockingly referring back to that Nicolaitan or Jezebel teaching, where she's saying, I will not impose any other burden on you, verse 24. And then if you compare that to Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council at verse 28, James will say those same words, that his intention at this time is not to burden you, the Gentiles, with anything beyond the following requirements at that time. But he specifies that there's going to be a weekly Sabbath where you will learn more. And we're going to read the whole context, but now we have to go through some other explanations before we can just read the whole text. So we'll get to that next. All right, now I have to explain chapter 2, verse 24, and why I see it. I see a problem. A punctuation is falsely added here to give you the wrong impression of what Jesus is saying here. So do you see where I put, it says speak, and the Lego I put underneath it, and there's a semicolon there? There is no punctuation in Greek, none. That is an English punctuation mark. That is not in Greek and is therefore misleading, potentially, if it doesn't belong. Now, what you have to actually read is the context and what is Jesus saying. But unto you I say, and unto the rest in Thyatira, as many as have not this doctrine, that is the doctrine of the Nicolaitans or of Jezebel, to what? To eat meat sacrificed to idols, and which have not known the depths of Satan. So you've not reached the level of the bate, B-A-T-H-E, of Satan, which is what Jesus is calling this doctrine. And we referenced earlier, that is a quotation, mocking quotation of Paul. So Jesus is of 1 Corinthians, I think it was 2:10. That's in the last episode. So he's already in a mocking statement. He's made one mocking statement. Now, this next statement is more mocking. And so he's already in that mode. As they say, Lego speak, I don't know why we have to have Old English here. As they say, I will put upon you no other burden. So the whole idea here is that the Jezebel, Nicolaitans, they are telling you, those who say, we want to eat everything, They are saying, Jesus saying, You've not known the depths of Satan. As they speak, I will put no other burden on you." He is mocking these people. He says they're teaching you the depths of Satan and telling you, as they say, we put no other burden on you. So they basically have removed burdens from them. Jesus is not saying my only burden on you is don't eat meat sacrificed to idols, because that would undermine what? That would undermine the Jerusalem Council ruling, because there were 3 other rulings: fornication. There was a ruling of don't eat meat strangled, don't eat meat with blood in it. Okay, so Jesus isn't saying this; he's mocking somebody is saying this to the people of Thyatira and probably the other 2 cities. Okay, so he is mocking the person who talks about, hey, you need to learn the depths of God where we can eat meat sacrificed to idols. That's Paul's doctrine in First Corinthians, and that's the words "bathe" of God is from First Corinthians, the same book that you read twice that you can eat meat sacrificed to idols in chapter 8 and 10, and we'll get to that in the next episode. So this is again sinister, if you ask me, sinister intervention, so you do not see what it says. So as they say, I will put upon you no other burden. So they're taking out of context what James is saying to liberate themselves from having to follow God's word. And you'll see this is pervaded in even later textual situations. We'll get into that next. Now let's go back and see what is Jesus is very angry and hates the teachings and the deeds of the Nicolaitans, and he is referring back, obviously, to the activity of the 12 apostles in the Jerusalem conference. That was a group from Antioch had a question: do we have to be circumcised to be Christians? That was the only question posed in Acts 15:2, and then it went into certain rulings, and you'll see how James resolves it very well and very reasonably. So 3 times in Acts, it fit to verse of chapter 15, 20, and 29, they mentioned the prohibition on eating meat sacrificed to idols, and it will be repeated later in Acts 21:25, where James is confronting Paul about having heard rumors that Paul is an apostate from the law of Moses. So you can see there is a link, if you're paying attention, to why this is being mentioned in Acts 21. James has figured out there's something wrong with this guy. I'm going to put him down and give him the truth. What he needs to do is fix what he's doing. But James doesn't have ironclad proof. He doesn't have the epistles which mention this. He's just heard rumors, and he tells that to Paul. And so let's look at these 3 passages, Acts 15:20, and I'm going to read it from the ASV. But that we write unto them that they abstain, that is, do not eat, from the pollution of idols, and from what is strangled, and from blood. So 3 food groups. And that's in addition to not committing fornication. Okay, so this is the 3 food issues, and that's important. That it's just the eating of food. Now, strangled food and is food which is really, apparently, due to the way it was killed. God doesn't want you to eat meat that's been tortured, basically, instead of killed quickly. Okay, and the other is blood in it was considered toxic. It was called unclean because the word unclean in Hebrew doesn't really mean unclean. It means toxic versus non-toxic food. So there is a toxic, we now know scientifically, in the blood when you eat meat at the market, and that's why they have to wash it in ammonia 3 times under FDA rules. And because it's so toxic, if you ate meat with the blood in it, you are eating pure toxins. It's not a good thing to try to soak up get the gravy with blood in it, just so you know. Anyway, so this is it. Let's go to the next one. Acts 15:29 ASV, quote, that you abstain from things sacrificed to idols, which if you keep yourselves, it shall be well with you. Now that's his final ruling. That's how he worded it in the final ruling. Again, abstention means do not eat. Now this is important. Acts 21:25. Paul is the person listening to this. Paul is confronted by James saying, we, the 12, have heard rumors that you are guilty of apostasia. Please go look at it in the Mountsy interlinear or reverse interlinear. And Paul is told that we've heard you've been telling even the Jews don't have to circumcise their children. And he does do that. He says there's no more no more Jew or Gentile. In Romans 7, he says the wife of God, talking about the Jewish people, specifically if you read it in context, since the husband has died, you are now free to marry another. So he is implying that somehow the Father God actually died. They're now free of that law. And many scholars who are Protestants say, hey, Paul really didn't use good language here. The Father died, but that's the way it reads. We can't change it now. But he says you're now free to marry another, Jesus. And by the way, the Gnostics believed that God the Father died, citing Romans 7, just so you know. So the Gnostics that were considered complete heretics always relied upon Romans chapter 7, and it's still to this day has never been found any variant can escape what I just told you, okay? But that's a whole nother issue about Paul. But now this is the point. In Acts 21, James is seeking reassurance from Paul about him following the law. And he's going to then tell him, do this ritual vow from the book of Numbers. And then he's going to recite, for some reason, unnecessarily, it would seem that these were the commands we gave the Gentiles. So obviously he thinks that Paul isn't keeping these either. So he's confronted him saying, we've heard rumors that you tell the Jews don't have to be circumcised, but why is he now going to say this? So just let's read it, realize this is the context. But as touching the Gentiles that have believed, we wrote, he's telling Paul, one-on-one, nobody else present, giving judgment that they should keep themselves from things sacrificed to idols and from eating meat with the blood in it and from eating what is strangled. Okay, so why is he asking Paul? Because he's heard rumors that he's telling Jews don't have to follow the law. Then what do you think he's thinking Paul is doing with the law he gave the Gentiles? He's thinking the same thing. If Jews don't have to be circumcise their kids, and they're no longer, they're released because of the death of the husband, if he's heard these rumors, or if he's heard the rumor, Galatians 3:19 says the law wasn't given by God, Yahweh was given by angels, and Paul ridicules the Galatians. Why do you foolishly want to obey Sabbath and be in bondage again to the weak and beggarly celestial beings? That's Galatians 4:8-10. If he's heard any rumors like that, he is definitely asking this for a purpose. And that appears to be why he's asking, telling him, you've got to do this to prove to everyone here who can see you do this ritual vow at the temple. They'll know there's no truth to this rumor that you are an apostate and that you will not follow the law. This is going to prove to them you keep the law. Does Paul tell him the truth of something he wrote a decade earlier in 47 AD and is repeated multiple times in 1 Corinthians and other epistles? No, he doesn't tell James the truth. He says, sure, I'll go do it. I'll do exactly what you tell me to do. I'll prove everyone I keep the law. And that's clear from the book of Acts. You don't need to prove Paul's a fraud from anything he writes in his own letters. Just read Acts 21. Read Acts 21, verse 25, and ask yourself, why is James asking him this? Now, I say this all to prove what Jesus' point is. Jesus knows all this. Jesus is completely aware who is the person we're to identify as the leader of the Nicolaitan party, who is the inspiration for eating meat sacrificed to idols. He is wanting us to test ourselves. So we are now a Protestant generation that has lived on Pauline gospel all the time. I was one of the same thing, just like everybody, most of you who are Pauline Christians. I was a Pauline Christian, 100%. And I just confronted so many different things that made and forced me to test Paul, and I was never intending to. And you now are listening to something that's pointing you to now think twice. Maybe I should test Paul because I'm giving you enough information. Now we're going to go, and I have to now explain something about the passage that is just simply a problem in the textual transmission of what happened in Acts 15. So we're going to go through that next. All right, now I want to read to you Acts 15, and I want you to pay attention to what is so material here is that James does not trust just giving this letter to Paul and Barnabas. He doesn't trust them. he is going to require 2 other people to go with them and deliver the letter. He does it in a very nice way, and you can never accuse him of being distrustful of Paul the way he says it. So that's good. It's good tactics. Good. This man is a good administrator, the Bishop of Jerusalem, and Jesus' brother. Anyway, in Acts, Paul and anyone else is constrained from freely interpreting this letter by James, sending 2 agents back to Antioch with this letter. It is possible James suspected Paul, besides maybe others, who might exaggerate the ruling to give more allowance than it does. Here is the first part of this, and I have to do this in 2 parts just because there's a corruption in verse 24, but we're going to get there one step at a time. Wherefore my sentence is, meaning my ruling, if that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to God, but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollution of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood. For Moses of old time has in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. Pause. So what does he expect? Does he think there's only going to be these 3 commands and you'll never have to basically go to Sabbath? No, he's actually saying right here. He expects we're all going to go to Sabbath. So that's another thing. This whole idea that the church didn't follow Sabbath is ridiculous. Why is he saying this? He is saying, this is what I'm giving you now. We don't have to trouble them more than this for the moment. But what's going to happen? For of old time, Moses has in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. There's always a Torah reading every Sabbath in a synagogue, and he's expecting that Gentiles, like the God-fearing Gentiles, even under the current administration prior to Christ, that's what they do. The Gentiles can go to synagogue, they listen to it, and they grow and they learn in the Torah. And you have to understand, most people don't have books. So the only way you learn 99% of the time in those eras was, a book was extremely expensive. It's like I want to say a laptop, but a laptop's not that expensive. It's a seer. Even $1,000, a lot of people can afford that. Imagine your laptop cost you $10,000. That's what a book meant. That's what a Bible meant. So what would you do to learn for the word of God? You would go on a weekly basis to the synagogue and hear the word of God. And that's what he's saying. I'm trusting that's going to take care of it. Then, verse 22, then pleased it the apostles and elders with the whole church, this is Luke speaking now, to send chosen men of their own company to Antioch with Paul and Barnabas. Now, why did he need to do that? Why did he order that? Let's continue here. Namely, Judas, surnamed Barsabbas, and 2 Silas, chief men among the brethren. So these 2 are there for a purpose. What would be that purpose? To make sure that this message would be conveyed correctly. Does that show some sign of distrust for Paul and maybe even Barnabas? That they're not trustworthy to convey this back to the people back in Antioch? That they would downplay it or sidestep it? So that's a good question. And they wrote letters by them after this manner. That meaning Luke is saying they, meaning James, and I suppose maybe someone else assisted James. They wrote letters. The apostle and elders and brethren send greetings. So here's the letter that's being issued. Send greetings unto the brethren which are of the Gentiles in Antioch and Syria and Cilicia. By the way, look how expansive they are, even in a Gentile mission at this time. For as much as we have heard that certain which went out from us have troubled you with words subverting your souls, I'm going to read you the way it really reads, to whom we gave no commandment. Okay? So where did this come from? Saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to which we gave no such commandment. All these bold blue with the yellow in the back, these are all phony from the 10th century. Now, why did the King James use this phony language? We're going to get into that for a second. And I'm going to just continue on here just a all right. Well, here's the truth is the highlighted words saying ye must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom that's all false, to whom we gave no such commandment. The word such isn't there. So it's just simply there's been these people who've been trying to upset you, subvert your souls, to whom we've given no commandment, no authorization for what they're doing. Okay. And but that's not what is in Acts 15:24. Was it legitimate? Was there any basis to what they were doing? We'll see. The UBS Greek New Testament says in 2006 at page 117, this entire phrase, this whole thing, they don't pay attention much to the such, but that's also false. This entire phrase first appears in the minuscule 1175, which dates from the 10th century, meaning the 900s. And there's corroboration here in Gill's exposition. Gill is from the late 1800s, so he even knew about this. He says this, saying, you must be circumcised and keep the law, the ceremonial law, is not in the Alexandrian copy or the Vulgate copy or the Ethiopic, the Alexandrian copy and the Vulgate Latin and the Ethiopic version leave out this clause. So this is all out of the Alexandrian. Now, Alexandrian didn't exist at the time of the King James. King James is 1611. Alexandrian text, it's called the Alexandrinus, is given to the king, I think it was 1627. So it's not 1611, but we're going to see, oh, yeah, the King James definitely knew what it really said, because there was a text they had complete possession and control of, as we'll see in a minute. And also, it wasn't in the Latin Vulgate. So if you were the King James, wouldn't you want to look and see, does the 10th century manuscript minuscule that you're looking at, does that have any backup from the Latin Vulgate? And obviously, also, if it's the 10th century, you think there's no actual Bibles prior to that time? I mean, come on. they have nothing. So they actually, how can I put it? The only manuscripts that have it begin in the 900s. So that means any manuscript earlier than that doesn't have it. And that includes the Latin Vulgate. But we don't have Alexandrinus at the time of the King James, but we'll show you what they did have. Now here's the Latin. So we can see it says, for as much as we have heard that some going out from us have troubled you with words, subverting your souls, to whom we gave no commandment. Exactly how the Alexandrinus that was given to the King James actually was given the Alexandrinus about in 1626, I think it was. But here's what the King James Bible had in its custody. It had the oldest Bible discovered at that time. Now, there's been Bibles discovered a little earlier. The Sinaiticus is a little earlier than this one by 50 years. But the Codex Bezae is considered 400 AD, and at that time was the oldest Bible anybody had. And guess who had control of this? Beza at Geneva, which means the Calvinist party had the unique ability to look at this. And they didn't just have one copy, they had two copies. Now, there's some nefariousness of how they got these copies, but that's not, I guess they justified it. They robbed a monastery and stole their manuscripts. But you know what? It's good, because in the end, it liberated these two manuscripts from the monastery that should be for all posterity of Christianity. But here's the problem. When you find something that old and you don't use it to help the Bible to be correct, that's a big problem. And that's exactly what the King James does. It does not have these words. The same thing, saying ye must be. Why are they in the King James? Oh, because we like them. That's why, because we can see right here in this. So here's the Beza on the left. Here is the Latin translation that was done by a scrivener in the Codex Bezae Catabrigiensis. Scrivener Frederick Henry Ambrose. He died in 1891. He did this at the University of Cambridge. I mean, this is a top guy. You can find this at the archive.org and just look up Beza Codex Canta, and you'll find it. And just to show you, if you don't even know Latin, you can just simply grab this screen, grab it, and then translate each of the words and put them into Google Translate, and look what you get. For we've heard that some of us going out, they disturbed them with their words, destroying their souls, which we have not commanded. So right there's exactly what I'm showing you up here is correct. And this was known to the King James translators. Why are not they doing it? Well, I'm going to tell you, it's this very same reason why. I want to show you again. That's why the semicolon is here, my friends, to make you not understand. This is this is Jesus mocking this idea that James had said something that you could justify that we're not giving you any other command. And that's not, this is Jesus mocking that was what the Nicolaitans were saying. We don't have, there's no other commands but what we have. And there's somehow they were misusing James's statement to justify what they're doing. Let's eat anything we want. because he said, he doesn't want to put any more commands on us than we already have, which is 0. According to Paul, there are no laws that we have to obey. They're all gone. They're dead and gone. All right, so let's see what else we have here. Okay, and I just want to show you another corruption that's amazing, disgusting. This is again, the King James Bible doesn't go with the Codex Bezae. This doesn't have it there. It doesn't have it in any of the other texts they could have looked at. Again, it's a 10th century corruption. And so what is this about? It says, this is James confronting Paul, saying, we've heard rumors that you are an apostate, guilty of apostasy. That's the word. Go look at Mount C reverse interlinear at Bible Gateway. Just put in Acts 21:23, I think it would be, or no, Acts 21 verse 21. Put that in there and just go to Mount C interlinear and click the button, and you're going to see the word. And he's going to say the word means forsake. Why not just tell us what it is in English? It's the same word as it is in Greek. Just put the word apostasy as the translation, Mr. Mountsie. Very frustrating. There's all these efforts to conceal from us things that we need to know to test Paul. They don't want you to test Paul because they're all in love with Paul. But Paul is a test for true Christians to follow Jesus Christ and to make a decision, commitment to Jesus Christ, to obey him and nobody else, no competitor. So let me just show you. Let me show you here. Here is just to quickly show you. This is, see, I crossed it all out here. This is the actual statement of Cambridge Bible Commentary on this verse. Okay, that they observe no such thing save only. The oldest texts omit all these words, and they appear merely to be a marginal comment, echoing in part but with the negative, the language of Acts 15:5. They do not represent any part of the form given in that chapter of the letter of the Synod. And do you realize that means the King James Bible didn't even have a manuscript that said it? It was a marginal note completely. It had never been converted into the text. And yet they're using a marginal note instead of the text they're looking at. They'd rather use a marginal note. That means a handwritten note on the side, like you would write on your own little Bible, like, hey, I think this might be a thought. Doesn't it mean this or that? You can't do that. That's a marginal note. They're not even daring to put it in the text. And there it's in your Bible. It's in your King James Bible, ladies and gentlemen. This is how it reads in the King James. So listen to what it sounds like now in the King James, just to show you again why I say that semicolon is corrupt. And that's a big part of this whole episode. That semicolon, I told you, is a corrupt semicolon to make you think the opposite of what it really is. And if you think I'm kidding you, look at what they're doing here. They're taking a marginal note and they're making it into this red highlight. So let's listen to it and you'll see my point. James is telling Paul, to prove that you are a law compliant and not an apostate, I want you to do this. Take these 4 guys, take them and purify yourself with them and be at their charges with them, meaning pay their way. There's temple fees. That they may shave their heads and all may know that those things whereof they were informed concerning you, that you're an apostate, he just said that to him, are nothing, but that you, Paul, keep yourself also, walk orderly, and keepest the law. Now, the key here is keepest the law, because the red words are going to twist that around, twist James's words to Paul, so that it actually gets rid of all the law for all the Gentiles. Just these few words in the marginal note. Verse 25, as touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded, let's not read the red letters yet, that they keep themselves from things offered to idols and from blood and from strangle and from fornication. Acts 21, 24, 25. That would be fine. Now let's read it with the red letters, the marginal note. Okay, so he's saying to him, this is also that you prove, let me highlight here, that all of these accusations against you, you can prove they're all nothing by you obeying this vow at the temple. And it will prove that thou keepest and also walk orderly, and you keep the law. So does James believe the law still applies? Oh yes. Do the 12 believe the law applies? Of course. This is James is the blood brother of Jesus Christ. He is in charge of the 12. He is the bishop of Jerusalem. The 12 listen to him. Because why? Because that's what we know from the Gospel of Thomas. Even though it may not be canonical, it does likely record exactly what happened. Jesus tells the 12, when they said, when you're gone, who should we follow? And he says, I want you to follow my brother James. That makes sense of why he is the Bishop of Jerusalem, doesn't it? Anyway, I digress. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observe no such thing. What? Keepeth the law, that they don't observe the law. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute, save only that they keep themselves from things offered to idols, blah, 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 blah. So in context, in the original version, you can see it wasn't just do these commands, these food, eating things, and no fornication. He then said, I expect that you're going to go to the synagogue each week, as well, the law is read weekly. So you know what? I don't have to burden you with too much. That's what he's trying to say, which makes sense. You don't throw 100 commands on people. It's a short letter, it keeps it simple, and he's giving him things that are immediately necessary so that when you sit down and eat together, you do not serve to somebody in a Christian fellowship meat that's been sacrificed to idols. And if you did that, you have to walk away. You can't eat that stuff. So this leads to a whole dispute with Peter, by the way, but we'll get that into another episode. All right, so now we have to read the second half of Acts 15, because again, this is what Jesus is quoting from in Revelation 2, verse 24. It seems good unto us, being assembled with one accord, to send chosen men unto you with our beloved Barnabas and Paul. He's being very nice and very polite. Men that have hazarded their lives for the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. So James is extolling Paul for having done that. Now everybody's going to say, whoa, gosh, well, then he's endorsed Paul. If you're reading between the lines, why is he getting these two other guys to go with him if you really, really trust him 100%? So he doesn't really, really, really do that. And then you'd have to say, okay, if he's an inspired source, then he should have known whether Paul was an apostate or not when he brings the accusation to Paul. But he doesn't know. And we have proof positive Paul was an apostate under the law, the way the law defines apostasy, when Paul in Galatians 3:19 says the law was given by angels through a mediator, and that they're weak and beggarly celestial beings. Why do the Gentiles want to be in bondage again to the weak and beggarly celestial beings? And basically, he's saying that the five books of Moses weren't given by God; they were given by weak and beggarly angels. So why do you want to be in bondage again to them? So Paul is a complete apostate. If you read Galatians 3:19, 4 verses 8 to 10, take 10 minutes to read 3 verses in your life and find out you've been misled to follow an apostate. Please. And you're going to say, but why didn't anybody else tell us? I can't tell you that. You've got to ask yourself why people are deluded and won't follow God's commandments. In Deuteronomy 13:10, if somebody comes and tells you to not follow this law given here today, the 10 commandments in context, then you know that person is teaching a different God. It's not me. This is Yahweh speaking. You must take that false prophet, even if he has signs and wonders, does miracles and signs, you must take him and execute him. That is the toughest law you can have, that against somebody teaching something that is apostate. And that's why Paul was completely obviously going. He had to be compliant because he knows he's subject to a death penalty when James brings this up to him. But let's keep going here. Men that have hazarded their lives in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, we have sent therefore Judas and Silas, who shall also tell you the same things by mouth. Wait a minute. See, this is my point. Why are these two guys going? Why is he commissioning more people to take the same letter? Why can't he just trust Paul and Silas? He obviously does not trust Paul and Silas. Paul and Barnabas. He does not trust the two of them. He only trusts these other guys, Judas and Silas. These are guys he trusts. So he's sending people he trusts. He does not trust Paul. He does not trust Barnabas. Verse 28, for it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. Do you follow what he's saying there? At this time, we have no reason to put more on you than these at the moment. Okay, doesn't mean there's never going to be another command coming. I mean, if he said that, that's how the corrupt version wants you to read. There's nothing we command save except these little few commands. That would be how to word it if you wanted to exclude any continuing growth and nurturing in the commandments of God. But of course, people are in that era don't have books. You can't hand them a book and say, here's the law of God, here's the Gospels, because books are expensive, extremely expensive, and very difficult to produce. So this is an oral tradition predominantly. There are copies of the book of Matthew in Hebrew at the time. Anyway, then he says, then he's going to now repeat what the commands are, that you abstain from meats offered to idols. So this is is this in the letter itself? I just want to double check here. I'm not sure at the moment as I'm reading this. That you abstain from meat offered to idols and from blood and from things strangled and from fornication from which you keep yourself, you shall do well, fare you well. Okay, so it's obviously in a letter. Okay, good. So this is in the letter. And the letter even says, why would he put in the letter? There are these two other people who I want you to know. They're going to tell you the same thing by orally as you're going to learn from Paul and Barnabas. Why would he say this? Because these are the men who you have to double check with. In other words, he says you can test whether I said it or not by going to Judas and Silas. Now, here's the problem: when you're in Ephesus, where are Judas and people want to know how to behave in Asia Minor? That's Western Turkey. Antioch, which is where this is going, is part of Syria, way far away on the other side of Italy, in fact, and Asia Minor is all the way on the other side of Greece to the east. Now, what's the problem? You don't have Judas and Silas to tell people what the real commands were. What if somebody says, "Oh well, eating meat sacrificed to idols only applies if you believe an idol is something. Otherwise, you can eat whatever you want," which is Paul's teaching, as we'll see. All right, now I just want to now we're done, but I want to show you and teach you a little something about the manuscript evidence and why the King James Bible is relying upon. Sorry, Corey, relying upon a corrupt text. It should have relied upon the Codex Bezae, but I've shown you it did not follow that, even though it had possession of it, even though its party had possession of it. For some reason, they don't want to go with it. Now, watch what they go with. Now, this is all specified or specifically handled in a book called the Book of Acts. Bruce Winters, the article. It's by William Erdmans, obviously a very mainstream Protestant publisher, and this is 1993. And Peter Head used to work at the Tyndale Company. I don't want to say company, but who produces the Tyndale Bible. He's an excellent scholar. He's very well versed in the Book of Acts, particularly, and he knows his stuff. Now, what do we know? Do you see over here where it says Western 8.5% longer than Alexandrian line? So the King James Bible is not depending upon the Alexandrian text. It's relying upon what's called the Textus Receptus, which was something that Erasmus put together with a lot of 10th century, 11th century, 12th century manuscripts. And it really didn't have anything earlier, except Erasmus could have had access to the Codex Bezae, but he lives in England and the Codex is in Geneva. So we don't know if he ever made any trips to see the Codex Bezae. And actually, excuse me, I have to correct myself there. The Codex Bezae doesn't get robbed from the monastery until I think it's 1540s. So excuse me, I'm sorry. So no, Erasmus could not possibly have had any text younger apparently, that was reliable, younger than the 10th century, 11th century, 12th century, whatever. So he did not have authority like that. But by 1611, the King James had the Codex Bezae, and I showed you it had the correct version of this, right? So why am I showing you this? Because somebody didn't just do a little bit of corrections, not just a little bit, not fixing small little things. No, someone systematically, just the Book of Acts alone, and Peter Head is an expert in the Book of Acts. He's telling us what happened to the Book of Acts in the manuscripts that are being looked at by what we call the Textus Receptus. How many changes are in that Textus Receptus? All we know is Peter Head did systematic study of all the changes in the Textus Receptus from what? The earliest Alexandrinus text. So the Alexandrinus is dated to about 450 AD. He's not even looking at the Codex Bezae, but they're presumably very close to each other because they're close in time. Codex Bezae is 400 AD. So you got 400 AD, Codex Bezae, you got Alexandrinus 450 AD. So he's saying from the Alexandrinus text, you treat that as now the new bottom, meaning like the earliest text. Now, how many rewrites have been done? How many additions have been done since 450 AD to the time period, the Textus Receptus of Erasmus, which basically is what the King James is relying upon? How much changes had happened in just the book of Acts? This is not telling us how many changes have happened in the Gospels. Could be the same thing as we're going to see. What is the percentage change? 8.5%. And he says it is not rewrites. It's rewrites, not typos. So somebody almost made a 10% change in the Bible. So the King James Bible has a layer of fraud from the 10th century, not before, that is never found in the Alexandrinus of 450, is not found in the Sinaiticus of 350 for sure. And so this is the level of fraud that's built into the King James Bible. And people get upset because they're loving their King James, but you when that was made, they ignored the Codex Bezae. That would have saved the King James Bible to have it have true validity, and it had access to it because the Puritan party was the controllers of the King James version that was being produced, and they had full access to the Codex Bezae because they were fellow Calvinists. So anyway, let's read this. This is from page 292-93 of that book I just showed you. It was in several ways the pioneering work of Johann Jakob Griesbach, which spelled the beginning of the end of the Textus Receptus. That's the text that Erasmus created synthesizing all these 10th century, 11th century, 12th century works, and he created that. But now that we got the Alexandrinus and we've studied it, we'll look at the fraud in the book of Acts. 8.5%. 1 out of every 10 words essentially is being added that weren't there, or changes made, or deletions. Who knows? This is really important for you and I to know, that the King James Bible has all these additional changes. And what is the more authentic is always going to be the earlier, because there's no, the earliest you can get is the earliest and the most authentic. Anything later is presumably being changed for corrupt reasons, political reasons. Okay, let's keep reading here. All right. Okay, and I'm just going to make a small remark about this last slide, which is this last part here. A particular focus of interest in this area, meaning the study between the Alexandrinus era, 450 AD, versus the 10th century, 11th century, 12th century texts, is the divergent forms of the apostolic decree of Acts 15. So these works are completely divergent from each other. So they're completely inconsistent and contradictory. Okay, it's like flipping them sideways. And it's obviously people who want to get rid of the law. And a lot of Protestants don't understand. They think that the Catholics wanted the law and to obey the law, or they were legalists. Not at all. They believed they are the ones who got rid of Sabbath, right? They got rid of Passover as a time to to celebrate Jesus' resurrection. Oh, we'll do it on the day that we have the goddess Easter honored. We're going to do it on the day of Sabbath is going to be now moved to Sunday, the day of the worship of the God of the sun. We're going to do anything Constantine tells us to do because we're all slaves. We don't have a mind for ourselves and we're under coercion. So everybody's going to have to understand 1,000 years from now that we just were compelled to do this. We didn't have any free will. That's really what was going on. But that church, as a result, became corrupt, because you're supposed to die before you let anything like that. Literally die before you would let the Sabbath be moved to Sunday. You would literally have to let yourself be killed before you would move Passover to the day of the worship of the goddess Easter. I am sorry, friends. That's where we are today. We're living in a dystopian Christian world, and we don't know it. That's the problem. It's that all these people died and they didn't leave us a will saying, hey, we were captives. We did what we were told, and we pray to God you'll all wake up one day, retest everything, and find out we were just under coercion. We're weaklings and sorry. That's really what they should have done. Left us some sort of testament to tell us. But instead, all we have is a lot of fraud and a lot of overlay of completely reaffirming that the law is dead and gone. That's what was key. So don't misunderstand. Well, any of this has anything to do with is they're corrupting it to make the law come back. They're corrupting it to get the law further and further away from us. That's the Catholic view. In fact, if you go back and study when the Sabbath was stopped in the 300s and it was switched to Sunday, the people didn't want to switch, and the church, the Catholic Church, made it law that if you would try to rest on Sabbath, you were a Judaizer, and you would be punished, excommunicated. They may have even wanted to kill you. I don't remember that right now. I have to study that again, but it's definitely, they used every legal impediment possible to impose on you that you have to rest only on Sunday and you cannot try to keep Sabbath anymore. And because that was the injunction of Constantine, we must have nothing in common. This was his decree at Nicaea. You Christians must have nothing further in common with the Jews, and that's why we're going to get rid of Sabbath, and that's why we're going to get rid of Passover. You're going to do it on Easter, and you're going to do it on Sunday. That's what he said. If you read his letter to the bishops thereafter. Okay, anyway, I hope this helps us understand why did Jesus quote Acts 15? Because Jesus intended to mock the Nicolaitans, the Jezebel, for using that very language. For I will put no further burden on them, is that this is what they were saying to try to make it sound like all you need to do is you can freely eat whatever you want. Jezebel is advocating, and the Nicolaitans are advocating you can eat whatever you want. And so this is how they were misusing the words of James and twisting them to sanction their conduct and sanction their eating practices in particular. All right. God bless everybody. Take care. Ciao. Bye.